The preamble to the Constitution begins. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. Note that the union is described as more perfect. We were not and are not America the perfect, America the infallible, America the can-do no-wrong nation. Instead, since our very inception, America has been focused on improvement. When the United States were established, some of the first freedoms ensured were those of the freedoms of press and the freedom of speech. Our founding fathers made sure to give the people a voice. While this was important for a number of reasons, one thing that this enabled was the process of improvement. When something is wrong in our country, we can speak up. That is a right ensured to us. Throughout history, many of our greatest weaknesses have been addressed only when people have utilized these freedoms. Women's suffrage, the civil rights movement, the abolishment of slavery, the disability rights movement, all of these came about when people saw wrongs that needed righting and spoke up. Patriotism does not mean blindly accepting everything our country does. In fact, to do so is the very opposite of patriotism. Our country was not meant to be one of complacency. To accept everything is to demean the freedom of speech and to weaken our nation. Instead, citizens have both the opportunity and the moral obligation to be involved in the state of the nation. To do so requires the freedom of speech and the freedom of press. Whether using these takes the form of voting, writing to a senator, or participating in a peaceful protest, or perhaps even something else. We are using our voice to help our country improve. Yet, for the extreme on one end of the spectrum, there is always an extreme on the other. While it is bad to never use our freedom of speech and to accept every wrong, it is also harmful to use our freedom of speech indiscriminately. Freedom of speech does not mean that we can say whatever we please. Things like slander, language intended to incite violence, and threats are not permitted, but beyond these things legally defined, a gray area arises. When do we reach the point of taking our freedom of speech too far? We as a society are increasingly losing sight of our true end goal in using our freedom of speech. Instead of using our freedom of speech to find what is right, it has become a competition to see who can loudest yell, "I'm right." It isn't wrong to want to stand up for your beliefs, to defend your position, but we must keep in mind that true end goal, that is, improvement. When Abraham Lincoln said, "A house divided against itself cannot stand," he did not mean that to disagree is wrong. But when the disagreement drives a wedge between two sides, when those who disagree use it to distance themselves from each other, when disagreement becomes a personal matter instead of one of policy, when we forget what we have in common, that is when our country is weakened. We must use our freedom of speech with tact, consideration, and with the sincere desire to improve. We must remember that improvement is a collaborative process. We may not always agree with everything everyone thinks, but everyone can bring something to the table. Instead of using our freedom of speech to prove someone else wrong, let us use it to find what is best for our country. When we use our freedom of speech, we are using the rights we have been given. Freedom of speech and freedom of press are a privilege, and as such, they must be used wisely. When we speak up against wrongs, we are honoring those freedoms. And when we collaborate and do so with a sincere desire to improve, then we are using that freedom to its full potential. When our founding fathers established America, they knew it wasn't perfect, but it was intended to improve upon the wrongs in society. We too today recognize that our country is not perfect, but just as our founding fathers, we too can improve. Since America's creation, we have done that. We have improved. Many of our flaws have been fixed and improved upon. Yet rarely is perfection truly achieved. We are always working towards it. Let us use our freedom of speech and our freedom of press wisely. As we do so, we can help make America an even better place. We can maneuver through the tricky process of fixing our flaws. While we may never become America the perfect, we will continually becoming America a more perfect union. Thank you.